Good morning. Good morning. My name is Iliana Panameno, and first I want to thank off Pat, CreativeMornings, and the MFA for making this all happen today. We're incredibly humbled to be here, but also really excited for the opportunity.
Hi everyone, I'm Mu, and I'm the other half of the brief ceremony, and to echo off what Iliana just said, thank you to Pat, the Creative Mornings team, the MFA, and especially everyone here for coming out on such an early morning on Friday. I don't even get up this early for work, but for listening to us speak on equality, which is such a loaded term. And a really quick fun fact, I actually used to intern at the MFA, right in the same department with Michelle.
So just to set the scene a little bit, Boo and I go all the way back to 3rd grade, when we used to be cute, as you can see. And we lost touch after a little bit, and we went to different high schools, then different colleges. I went to school in Nebraska, Moo went to school in New York, and you could just tell, just from naming those two places, that we always felt like we were the only ones in predominantly white institutions. So coming back from school and wrapping up college life and getting into adult life, we reconnected in the Back Bay area, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing. I think we were just like eating, most likely, having coffee, and we just connected instantly again, like time never passed. We love the same things. We love food, but especially free food. I think that's like top like of ours. Small scruffy dogs. But like I mentioned, really being able to talk about these issues rooted in systemic racism, and also just racial injustice, and coming from an area that's so heavily segregated as well. Boston's a really segregated city, and we don't say that enough, I think. And I was talking with somebody earlier, actually, I don't know if you want to wave your hand, but from Michigan, but she was mentioning that as well, that it's such a stark difference that even in some neighborhoods that you can go the street over and your health is just completely impacted just by your zip code, your access to a quality public education, and also health care, quality jobs. There's just so many things. And also with Massachusetts leading as the 4th state in the nation for the biggest amount of hate crimes. This is just something that we don't talk about, and Moo and I, we got together and we're like, well, what is something that we can do to start talking about these things in a very natural way, because storytelling is really involved, I think, in a lot of our communities, being able to heal and validate what we're thinking and what we're doing in our experiences. So this is why we created We Ceremony, a platform as a response to the lack of representation and negative portrayal of women of color in everyday life. And with these collected stories, we celebrate the unique voices within our community while also challenging society to confront these issues head on.
Yeah, so that was a lot. But, it just happened so spontaneously and very organically for Iliana and myself. What she said, so I went to NYU, which is a predominantly white school. When I went back home to Boston, just seeing how segregated the city is and not really finding my own people. And now, if you go into Chinatown, there aren't a lot of Chinese people there. But anyway, Iliana and I just found so much comfort in sharing with each other, and we thought, if we could do this for ourselves, there must be other women of color in the city of Boston who want the same space. So what did we do? Very simple. We wanted to have more positive imagery of our community and also to get to meet them. So we literally just grabbed our phone, a recorder on our phone, and we walked around different neighborhoods in Boston interviewing different women. And it got to the point we were so shameless, we would chase after women to interview them. And I think one time I was wearing heels, so all you hear is that, and then this woman turned around and she just kept walking, and she was so scared. And then, and then another time we were in downtown, and I think it was right at the opening of Primark, and so there were a whole bunch of people there. So we're like, great. We know that there are going to be women of color, and there people are going to be shopping, it's downtown, it's a popping area, let's go. So we're just standing there, and someone comes up to us, and she goes, are you stalking someone? Do you need help? And we're like, no, we're just waiting for someone to interview.
She thought we were stalking an ex-boyfriend. She's like, I can help you guys.
But really, we just wanted to meet other women, and similar to Humans of New York, but I think for us what's different is that we're very intentional about the stories we want to share. And so on our website, we didn't show it to you because we're actually redesigning our website, so you can look at it now, but it'll be new. But we have 3 different components. The first part is Streetwear, which is our on-the-spot interviews. The second part is Spotlight, and it's our targeted interviews where we interview women from all over the world who are positively contributing to their communities, whether it's in big ways or small ways. And this month, we actually have, we interviewed the founders of Mented, which is a cosmetics line for women of color. So you should be sure to read about their story. And then the last part is Perspectives, where it's sort of like an open forum, and people can submit their written pieces, visual, audio, whatever, however they want, and just share it with a greater audience. And I know a few people in here have contributed to that, so thank you. And but I think for us, Streetwear is definitely our favorite because it's that very spontaneous and on-the-spot feeling that we can create, this on-the-spot sense of comfort that we can create for other women. And we're just going to share 2 stories that really resonated with us.
So the first story that really greatly impacted, I think, the development of We Ceremony is, this is Dana Reis, and we met her outside of an H&M downtown crossing, and we were looking far and wide for somebody to interview that day. It was a Sunday, it was really hot outside, it was really nice, and just like we were getting so many turn downs, and everybody was having places to go, or just places to eat. But this story really captivated us because I think that this happens to a lot of us, that we come to a point in our life, or maybe we're at it right now, that we don't know what to do next. And Dana Reis, she was turning 25 years old, and as she was telling this story to us, she began to cry, and instantly, and we were just really captivated by that, because I think within more of our American culture, we don't do that enough, and I think, especially where my family's from in Salvador, we cry about everything. It doesn't even take us a lot to cry, but like we probably don't even meet somebody, like don't even know somebody or have a relationship with them, but if we connect with you in a deeper level, like we will cry with you. And I think we're also a community that's not quick to try to find solutions for you or make you feel better, but just feel like we're in the moment with you. So this is Dana Reis' story, and I'll just like give you a couple seconds to read about this. But we felt very drawn from this story, and we could also tell that she just really needed somebody to talk to. She was making a big career move change, and I think she found a lot of solace, and it resonated, her story with us. And this is Nala. She was actually one of our first interviewees. Mu and I met her at Harvard's campus. She was chilling at a small table with her friend talking, and we asked her if we could interview her, and she was really excited. And like quickly, she told us about her passions, work life at Harvard University too. And this is also her story that she shared. And just in a few moments, this story also really deeply impacted Mu and I too, because she's telling her story of how being a black woman, and because of her hair, it was really looked down upon at her job, specifically her dreadlocks, and how it was deemed, but also labeled as inappropriate, unprofessional, and just disgusting in general. So we were also really captivated about this, because usually in our interview process, we ask the question if there's a misconception about your race and or culture that you would like to dispel, what would that be? And this is how she answered. So I know for the people of color in this room, this is a common theme in the interviews that we have had with different women of color, that they feel like they can't feel 100% of themselves at the workplace. And I'm sure that some of you know what I'm talking about, like you have to put your most whitest voice on the phone, depending on where you're from, what country. You probably think twice about what food to heat up in the office microwave, because people are going to ask, what's in that? Like, what's the name of that? Can I buy that at Whole Foods? But like Alda mentions at the end of her quote, it's so important to be your authentic self no matter what setting that you're in, and just to be who you are, because nobody can take that away from you in your story.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why Iliana and I love these two stories so much and putting them next to each other, because it really shows the complexity of women of color. So for our first interviewee, going through a quarter-life crisis is something that's so universal that everyone goes through. And women of color, we feel that too. But with Nala, this is a very unique and specific experience, and she deserves to own that story for herself. And I think just putting these two stories together shows just really how big and diverse this fabric of the women of color identity really is. Okay, so jumping into today's theme of equality, I remember when we were first invited by Creative Mornings, they said, it's going to be on equality, and we asked, well, why isn't it on equity? Because before we can even talk about equality, we have to address equity. Equality assumes sameness, that we have the same rights, which we don't, that we have the same opportunities, the same status, and the same power. We don't have the same economic status, nor do we have the same social status. And unfortunately, we live in a society where our gender and our race dictate the way we are treated and the way in which we experience the world. And so for, as a Chinese woman, I go down the street very differently than my partner, who is black, or my friend Brandon, who's right there, who is a white man. And so equality is really dangerous to think about, because it erases our histories and our experiences and combines us into a monolith that we are not. So what is equity then? I really like this image because it shows that equity is fairness. It's taking an individual's needs and circumstances into consideration and treating them accordingly. And equity means that we're all given the necessary tools to have access to the same opportunities. So instead of striving for equality, what we need to do is build equity to ensure that one day we can achieve equality. And I think for us, with We Ceremony, Iliana and I try to promote equity by celebrating women of color in the same way that we would do our white counterpart. Like I said, we're not a monolith, and we can't be relegated to your assumptions of who we are supposed to be. And I really take pride in what we do, because it really started off with us giving each other our own space, but we find that through our work and just our informal and formal interviews, we're giving other women of color to their space to share the stories that's authentic to them. Okay, so, since Iliana and I started We Ceremony, we're often not on the side of telling our stories, and definitely not in front of a crowd. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm going to tell you, just thinking about today's theme and telling you a little bit more about what equality means and what it's meant for me growing up in the U.S. And I think I just want everyone to please keep in mind that these are just two stories out of an entire community. And to really talk about my story, I have to go way back to when I was 7 years old. My family and I immigrated from Taiwan to the U.S., and I just remember I was so excited. My older sister and I were so excited to come to the U.S. because 1, we were going to see snow. 2, we're going to have steak dinners every night, because that's what Americans do. And 3, we're going to finally fly in a spaceship, because we thought countries were on different planets. So we're like, yes, we're coming, and then we're going to see Disney World. And And one of the primary reasons my parents decided to uproot their lives, and I say their lives specifically because my life and my sister's lives were just beginning, but was because they really believed in the American education system, and they wanted my sisters and I to have the chance to be whatever we want to be. But given our current political climate, and I think way even before that, growing up in the United States as an immigrant and as a person of color is especially difficult. I was adjusting life in a new country. I was also learning English alongside my parents. So at 7 years old, I was learning English with my parents. And I mean, I'm not going to describe it, but I'm sure you can imagine what that was like, filling out school forms, making sure that they have the proper documentation, whatever. But it was an especially challenging time for not only me, but also my older sister, where most of the burden was put on her. And also, I didn't know race until I came to the US. I thought I was just a girl, but now I'm a Chinese girl. And there are specific connotations and negative connotations that come with that. And when there's already a preconceived notion of who you're supposed to be, you constantly feel like you're either living up to that identity or you're fighting against it. And either way, you're always aware of this ascribed identity that's constantly and like forever hovering over you. And I remember just in my early education, I went to public schools with students of color. Most of my Asian friends, particularly Eastern Asian friends, went to private schools and top exam schools, and they looked down on me because of that. And I'm not going to get into the model minority myth, and I'm sure you all understand that. That's a very dangerous myth because it pits one minority group against another. But fast forward to when I got accepted to NYU, and I think it was one of the happiest moments of my life because going there was my decision. I wanted to be there because I knew I was smart enough, and I also wanted to have this very specific experience. And the reasons for being at the school, though, was more than just a desire. It was having this opportunity meant that I was finally able to give back to my parents and that their sacrifices didn't go in vain, and I was honoring everything that they've sacrificed for. On the first day of meeting my art history advisor, and someone who I thought could be a mentor to me, I was really nervous because NYU, as you all know, is notorious for its high price tag education. And unlike many of my peers, I needed scholarships. So I asked her, and I was so nervous, and I'm still nervous thinking about it now, but are there additional merit-based scholarships? And she looked at me very casually and in a very matter-of-fact manner said, if you cannot afford to be at NYU, then you shouldn't be here. And in that moment, I just remember feeling shattered. And my advisor, she didn't know me. Oh my gosh. So she didn't know me, and she didn't know what it took for me or my family to get here. So it was very disheartening, and I'm very sad about it now still. But being told by someone from the very institution that accepted me, tell me that I didn't belong because my parents didn't have the money to afford school in full price, I think that was my first real confrontation of what equality means. And people don't often think about the intersections that comes with equality. There's financial and there's wealth inequality that's very much tied to a racial root, and we don't address that. But beyond that, for the next few years, I excelled, and I had the experience I wanted, and I even got a job after graduation. I was a buying assistant for Jimmy Choo. But, despite all of that, what my advisor said to me stayed with me, and it still stays with me because I think about it and I think about my experiences, and I feel like what she was saying to me was more than, this school is going to be a huge financial burden on you, but it's that you don't deserve to be here and you're not worthy of being here. And I think that really just, today's theme of equality and us tying it into equity was challenging because this is something that I didn't really want to face. Coming from, I'm a poor kid. I came from, my parents weren't of affluence, although we had a comfortable life in Taiwan. Uprooting your entire livelihood is challenging, and My sisters and I, with my parents, learning English together, we really had to build things on the ground up together. So I think what's helpful is that my story reflects an identity that isn't mine. And I put this here because I was thinking about the model minority myth. What does equality mean for someone when an identity is already ascribed to you? And I had to fight for who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and how I wanted the world to see me. And I think it's a very specific experience that people of color have to go through when we're in an environment where we can't be seen for just who we are.
Okay, y'all, so I'm kind of nervous right now, honestly, so I might just read my paper, my story, because I don't want to go off to another track and then, get emotional. When I start crying, I don't stop, so I don't want to So as young as I can remember, I pronounced my name incorrectly. Not because I couldn't say it, but because I knew it was just so much easier to roll off the tongue of my white peers. I can remember at different points in my life where saying Iliana felt uncomfortable to say because my tongue was trying to adjust to something that wasn't normal to say. Fast forward to today, after learning more about my roots and just going at different points in my life back to El Salvador, where my parents immigrated from, and reclaiming more of my history, I'm very intentional of saying my full name with the accent and pronunciation my parents intended it to sound, Iliana Panameno. I can remember meeting a city official at my job and he asked for my name. Without hesitation, I answered Iliana Panameno. He responded, "Okay, I'm just going to call you Lily from now on." But in my head, all I heard was, "Oh, that is too difficult to pronounce and to make me feel less uncomfortable. I'm just going to call you a name, but a shorter version of your name and whacker version of your name will be of importance to me." And there was a time in my life when I was okay with this. I wanted to be like everyone else and blend in, whatever that means for a young Salvadorian woman. But today, especially in white spaces where the presence of my people is often disregarded, I make it a point to let you know that I'm here and I matter too. To this, this might seem a little bit extra, especially if your name is Madison or Becky, but it's so much more than the pronunciation of my name. It's to tell you that I'm here, I'm taking up space as a Latina woman, and that I'm not going anywhere. I'm the author of my narrative, and I refuse to take a back seat anymore when a similar interaction occurs, such as, "Your English is so good," or "You must be so proud that somebody from your community has a master's." Because we live in a white man's world, I share this message with my youth. Be unapologetically you. I remind them constantly whenever we go door knocking or meet with a resident or a public servant. Pronounce your name to others how your parents intended it to sound. Don't conform to the world and what society thinks is beautiful or important. Our parents did not walk more than 4,000 miles to get to this country to learn a new language and a new culture. I told you guys. Imagine if I didn't have this paper. A new culture, and just to always have that continual longing of being back home. To have our names be colonized and erased from history. So when I hear one of my youth say, "Hi, my name is Nikki," to somebody, I always remind her, "Your name is Nikana," because I wish that when I was that young, somebody was doing the same for me.
I know what Iliana and I do with We Ceremony storytelling, but storytelling really is just a first step. We want people to feel comfortable with who they are and not what society labels them. And that's why we have We Ceremony. And we all have the ability to be like my parents wanted, whatever we want to be. But as women of color, we've had to endure so many heartbreaking moments to fight that identity. And I think that's just such a huge distraction to all of the work that we can be doing. Another reason why we created We Ceremony was that we wanted to be able to look at our own strength, creativity, and recognize who we are through our own lens. And I hope we all can begin to really see the stories for what they are. But more than that, take these stories with you and reflect on your own lives, because stories aren't going to make change. It's systemic change that needs to be addressed. So how can you use the stories that we've shared with you today to apply it to policy changes? How will you use your privilege, your white privilege, your male privilege, your cisgender privilege, to help others in need and to really embody our story as if it was yours? But take a backseat to that because we don't want you telling our story. Just recognizing that these stories exist, and I hope just by hearing from Iliana and me today, that you really get to put a face on these real lived experiences and these stories. And our stories, though they are specific to us, may not be unique. And what we need is a collective support. We need everyone from our community to make sure that one day we can achieve equality, and that's through equitable policies.
But even to recognize, just to add what Mu is saying too, that there's even privilege within our own communities as well, coming from lighter skin cultures. There's a lot of privilege in that being able-bodied, even being able to go to college and knowing a bit about the process beforehand, that's another privilege too. But like Mu was mentioning, being able to recognize these different privileges is so important in the first step, and also being able to tell your story, right? There's a lot of healing and validation that happens when you feel like you're in a safe space, being able to tell something that really was an impact in your life, or was just really a great experience for you too.
Yeah, and so, we're all about spreading positive imagery of women of color. So here we have 4 of the women that we had on our panel at our first event in 2016, and we hope that's what you'll see women of color as.